Hi, welcome back to Lakes and Storms. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to be breaking down the 2023 Lakers offseason. So, what I'm going to be doing today is not necessarily bringing forth what free agents I think we should go for. I'm more going to be breaking down the Lakers cap space as it stands, how the new CBA is going to affect us, and some certain projections for contracts to kind of frame expectations for how or who the Lakers may be able to bring in this offseason. All right, so I want to start here with the basic salary cap numbers for the league entering the year. These numbers were announced just last week, and this is very important to the Lakers front office, to any team really. And we'll quickly see how these numbers are going to affect the Lakers' decisions. As I'm sure you have also noticed, is the second apron, which is new with this new CBA, and I'll be getting into how that affects the Lakers later in the video. So let's move forward to the current payroll. A few things to note here, as you can see, Malik Beasley actually has a $16.5 million team option. I'm going to assume that Pelinka is fine with declining that option and parting ways with Beasley. He's a great knockdown shooter, but he never hit his stride with the Lakers and was unplayable in the playoffs. I would be very surprised to see Beasley on the team come next year. Another thing to note is that Mo Bamba's contract is non-guaranteed. That's why it's in italics. So at the moment, he's on the roster. He's going to be getting paid $10 million next year, and if nothing changes. For the sake of this video, I'm assuming that we're not going to mess around with that, and we're just going to pay him that. Theoretically, we could waive Bamba because this is a non-guaranteed contract and bring him back for cheap. But for the sake of the video, I'm just going to assume that $10 million of the cap is going to Mo Bamba. And then the last assumption, which is much less important but still worth mentioning, is Maxwell Lewis's contract is unofficial right now. So I basically just used the same pay structure of Max Christie, who was a 35th pick last year, and just accounted for inflation a bit to give us those numbers that you see on the screen. So this is where we stand. And now we're going to get into what the Lakers are going to be doing in the offseason. And that brings us to priority number one, to sign Austin Reaves. So as you can see here, this is going to be his pay structure as I see it. And this is also where the first implication of the CBA comes in and really affects the Lakers offseason. So Austin Reaves is a restricted free agent, which means that the Lakers have the right to match any offer that another team offers him. However, in this CBA, there's this rule called the Arenas rule. It's meant to incentivize teams to keep their second round and undrafted players as they develop. Obviously, Austin Reaves, undrafted player. So as a result of this, the most money that he can get offered in the first 2 years of his contract is the numbers that you see in those first 2 years, the taxpayer mid-level exception. The interesting thing about this rule is that the Arenas rule only applies in the first 2 years of this next contract. The max that you can sign him is for a 4-year deal. So at the moment, the Lakers, when they extend him a qualifying offer, is going to be a 4-year, $51 million deal. That's how the math works out. However, other teams, because Austin Reaves is a stud, are allowed to theoretically max him in the final 2 years of that contract. So theoretically, Austin Reaves could be getting a 4-year, $98 million contract, very heavy on the back end. And the Lakers have made it very clear that they're going to match whatever offer is out there. I don't think it's likely that he is going to be getting a $98 million contract. I think maybe somewhere around $30 million in the final 2 years is reasonable. Which brings me to this contract, which is about a 4-year, 80 and change million deal. I think this is super realistic, and I think this is a non-negotiable part of the offseason. This is going to bring us to our next priority, which is going to be Rui Hachimura. So Rui Hachimura, phenomenal for us in the playoffs, a playoff riser, no ifs, ands, buts about it. He gave Darvin Ham a lot of versatility in the front court, and I can't speak to that enough. So prior to the playoffs, his agent was quoted saying that he's looking for Rui to be getting a 2 to 3 year deal at around the level of the mid-level exception. Now, he really picked up his stock next year, which leads me to believe that he is going to be making a little bit more money than that. So, my assumption is that he will be making probably a 3-year, $15 million deal. This seems pretty reasonable, and I think it's just out of the range of some other teams that might be looking to add him to the roster. Now, I grouped in D'Lo here too because this is actually probably the single most interesting part of the offseason. Lakers fans are very split on D'Lo right now. He obviously struggled greatly in the playoffs, and he's making a lot of money in the 22-23 year, $30 million. What I should note is that his contract was a 4-year, $117 million deal signed back in 2019. This was after he led the Nets to a 6 seed. It was their first playoff appearance in 4 years. This was also the deal that was the sign-and trade bringing KD to the Nets. So with the context of D'Lo's former contract in mind and his lack of playoff success this year and just kind of his mixed reputation around the league, I'm hopeful that we can bring him back on a cheaper per year basis if we offer him a full 4-year deal. So that's what I went with here for the front office. We're going to be giving him 4 years, $75 million. Something that should be noted is that I also took a look around the league where teams might be looking for a guy like D'Lo on their team, and there's not a lot of cap space available to those teams. So I think we could pigeonhole him in for a smaller contract than maybe what he's looking for. With all that said, if you look at the key on the right, this is going to put us well over the cap and just below the luxury tax. Just below the luxury tax, what this is going to do is this is going to limit our options. Instead of being able to offer the non-taxpayers mid-level exception, we would only be able to offer the taxpayers mid-level exception because that amount of the contract would put us over the luxury tax. So the taxpayers mid-level exception is at about $7 million, whereas the non-taxpayers is about 11.5 to 12 million. These contract numbers are unofficial right now, so I'm just using a little bit of assumption / educated guess here. And that's going to bring us to just the rest of the roster. With everybody here, there's a solid rotation. There's continuity with the last year. I think there's a lot of reason to be positive, even if it's just Rui and AR coming back. But I think D'Lo could be used as a trade chip later on in the year when he's trade eligible in January. And I think he will recoup some value at the start of the regular season, playing some important minutes for the Lakers. So let's go over to our mid-level exception and our minimum targets. So a few guys that I'm looking at for the taxpayer mid-level exception: Mason Plumlee, Lonnie Walker, Torrey Craig. The story with Mason Plumlee and Torrey Craig, while being different players, in the context of their teams is similar. both the Clippers and the Suns are paying a lot of money to their entire payroll right now. And I see the Clippers, at least, prioritizing other guys on their roster versus Plumlee, where Plumlee could come in here on a taxpayer mid-level. It'd be him making about the same amount of money he made last year. I believe it was $8 million. And he can come and be a solid backup big, get, at most 20 minutes a game, but be a solid contributor, be a connector on offense, a play finisher, and a solid enough rim protector for a bench unit. Torrey Craig, similar thing. You have Beal, you have KD, you have Booker, you have Ayton. That's a lot of money, and I could see Torrey Craig being the odd guy out as he was making more money than other contributors like Josh Okogie for them last year. And then also a guy I'm going to keep my eye on is Lonnie Walker. I think Lakers front office has all the reason to believe in Lonnie, especially after what he did for us, losing his spot after the trade deadline in the rotation and then coming in and giving us big minutes in the playoffs. I'll never forget that fourth quarter. And then that's going to bring us to the minimum players. I'm not expecting to pick up any contributors other than if we get Dennis Schroeder on a minimum. Dennis Schroeder this year is a 10-year NBA veteran. As a result of that, he gets a nice little pay bump where the minimum for a veteran over 10 years is more than anyone up to that point. Other interesting guys who I'm keeping my eye on, but I wouldn't exactly expect them to come back, Trey Lyles for the Kings and Lindy Waters. So the case with Trey Lyles is that the Kings have the cap space, but I don't know if they're going to prioritize that. He was kind of an end-of-the-rotation guy, but he could be a stretch big for us. You might question his defense, but you like to think that the rest of the Lakers front court can make up for that. And then Lindy Waters out of OKC, a relatively unknown name. He's going to be entering his third year. And he was barely a rotation guy last year, and I can just see him being kind of the odd guy out. And this is a guy who we could bring in for super cheap, and he can hit a three in the corner and just do some nice little, dirty work stuff, quote unquote, for us. So you're going to see this number, the $22.76 million at the bottom. That's going to be our distance after the first three signings to the second apron. So this is where the implication of the CBA comes in again, and that's going to be the new rule where if you offer a player or sign a player to a taxpayer mid-level exception, in this case, one of these guys or somebody else, I think we're definitely using that, then the second apron works as a hard cap for the team. So that means under no circumstances would we be able to pass that number, $22.76 million, and signing the rest of these rotation guys. With that being said, I don't think that's a big concern for the Lakers, as the rotation is pretty full already, so I think they can afford to bring in one taxpayer mid-level guy and then a few minimums. And I think that's going to be the offseason for us. I think we're going to see some continuity for the first time in a few years. And I'm really excited for, whatever new faces we bring in. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for the video. This is how I see the Lakers offseason going. Let me know what you guys think. And if you agree or disagree on any of these things, I'll be in the comments. So thank you so much for watching.